Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tactical Insight Show. Arsenal with a really bad defeat at home to Brighton. Let's not pretend otherwise. Listen, there were things to talk about in that first half and I do want to highlight them. But largely Arsenal were outclassed on the day. And was it just being outclassed on the pitch, or was there something about a mentality drop and maybe a concession, a conceding of the title, especially after Man City's win at Everton? We're going to explore all that, but this was a tactically fascinating game. And now I'm back with Graham. Graham, it's good to see you.
Good morning, mate. Yes, Brighton inflicted what I thought was the final fatal blow in Arsenal's slim Premier League title hopes this season with a victory at the Emirates yesterday. To win a Premier League title these days, you have to get 90 plus points, and that's what, when you're up against Man City, you have to do because you can make very few mistakes. And Arsenal, for a lot of the season, were perfect. You know, they were for 19 games, 50 points. But as the season's developed, the injuries, mistakes, and probably the pressure in the end, I thought for the first time yesterday, the team, when they went one down, I think table pressure of the Manchester City's victory at Everton, I'm not saying they gave up the ghost, but I think there was a lack of intensity, almost like accepting that probably the title was done for this season. I think we lost Zinchenko in build-up to this game, and I think he was a massive miss yesterday. I know we're going to talk about that today. And I think to lose Saliba and Zinchenko, who are two key ball progressors from deep, affected the outcome. I also thought there was a very poor refereeing from the referee on Sunday. He put himself in a really difficult position. He should have booked Martinelli for a barge on Mitova very early on. He didn't do that. And then when Caicedo got his revenge on Martinelli with that awful tackle, I think he, having not made the decision to book Martinelli, then sort of like evened it up, which that tackle put Martinelli out of the game. And I think Brighton were very clever in this game. They stifled the flow early on, sort of like quietened the crowd. They targeted our two wingers who had won the game for us at the Annex with some very heavy tackling, their fullbacks, and they got away with it. Put one of our wingers out of the game, which sort of like stopped us having that pace in the left half space when we attacked. And ultimately, in the end, I thought Brighton, who are very well coached by De Zerbi, I have to say a very good team, were worthy winners.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go into the match stats. Apologies, everyone, for my voice. That, by the way, I have to say that. Still recovering, but always well enough to do the show with you, Graham. Well, look, we had 14 shots there, 12, fine, only 2 on target. And I think that's a key thing. And I'm going to highlight that later in the show, why I think that's important. We had far less possession. I've never known anything like it at the Emirates, unless you're playing a Man City.
Well, Brighton are a very good possession-based team,
they're unbelievable
under De Zerbi.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
I think the key stat for me, James, I'll try and take some of the show today with your voice, as it is, is that expected goals XG. This is the first time this season where Arsenal were under 1 goal per expected goal in the game, under less than 1 XG, 0.84. And I think in the game they had 0.10 of an XG of chances. That's the lowest it's been. So ultimately, Brighton stopped Arsenal from creating clear chances. Having said that, in the first half, I thought we did have 3 big chances. Odegaard, who wanted that extra touch, and the chance was gone. And then Trossard, when he finally got into the box, wanted that extra touch again, and his shot hit the bar. But I think he should have got the shot away earlier. Saka pinged one past the post. And there were moments in the first half when Brighton, for all their good possession play, nearly gave us the ball when they were playing out. We just so close to sort of getting turnovers, and we actually had more turnovers than them in the game. And we were pressing reasonably well first half. I thought there were chances in that first half where we could have maybe got that first goal. I thought this game was always going to be about the first goal. Who got the first goal won the game, and that's to me how it played out. Yeah,
hold that thought as well about sort of the turnovers, because we're going to talk about that in a sec when we talk about Arsenal's plan in this game. Okay, cool, 31 final third entries there, 19. Zone touches, as you can see, they better us by 4. 5 high turnovers to 3, which I wouldn't be surprised they all came in the first half.
Yeah.
And a field tilt of 61% to 39, is that right? Wow.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was quite shocked when I saw that, but that's where I get my numbers from, so I trust those numbers.
But that doesn't surprise, I mean, because actually, as bad as the second half was, we did have moments in their half, which didn't do anything with it. Let's have a look at the defensive stats as well. 20 tackles there, 15, 7 deceptions to 8, 6 clearances, 13, and 8.9 passes per defensive action to 8.1, considering they looked the aggressors, pressing us loads. But we did our thing in the first half, pressing them, and that's why the 3-0, I wouldn't say flatters them by any means, because they had the far significantly better chances in the second half, and you know, they capitalised on it. But it makes it seem like Arsenal were never in the game, and I actually think in the first half they were.
Yeah, I think in that first half, had he booked their fullbacks, that would have changed the outlook slightly, because the fact that they didn't get carded meant they could always press high. We didn't have Martinelli's pace in that left half space, as I said, so they could press high. And had they been carded, both fullbacks, and their left back fouled Saka 4 times before he finally got a card, they would have had to change their approach slightly. The fact the referee allowed them to get away with a lot of their tackling in that first half enabled them to press us really well. The pressing, passes per defensive action numbers very even, as you say.
So let's talk about the plan, because actually Arteta, who's going to get some criticism from me later for sure, I actually think he set out with a very decent plan, if I'm honest. He didn't try and ask Tierney to be Zinchenko. We all know that that just doesn't work naturally for us. So what was a 4-3-3 in lineup actually very much looked a 4-3-3 on the pitch as well.
Yeah, I think the problem we had really was the way that actually Tierney playing out here was not used. So it's almost like he's in that left half space a lot of the time when Ramsdale got the ball, and we're going to talk about today how Ramsdale went long a lot in the game, almost like 50% of the time he was going long, which we don't normally do. Without Saliba in the middle of the defence, and now Zinchenko in the left back position, it's almost like Arsenal just didn't want to use Tierney in build-up. I found this a bit strange, and often he was in that left half space to receive the ball. So clearly, I don't understand why that was. But clearly Arsenal didn't do it, and so as a result of that, Arsenal were kicking long a lot to Gabriel Jesus, who was up here having to fight aerial duels with the likes of Dunk all the time, and that's not Jesus' strength. We know he likes to drop in here, and we also know he likes to drift out wide, so to sort of like move their defenders around. When you're going long all the time, that doesn't suit Gabriel Jesus. So although Arsenal set up traditionally in the 4-3-3, as you say, players played in their normal position. We didn't really get Tierney up high very much. No. If you're going to play him out there, you'd think he'd want to come up here on the overload. But with Martinelli gone, obviously it never really, gone out of the game, of course. It never really happened. And it was a strange sort of performance by Kieran Tierney, and a strange the way that we didn't use him or play to his strength.
Yeah, Arsenal I felt were very much building out, sort of just splitting the defence, almost kind of going back to when Liverpool play, for example, like this.
The other thing I saw, James, actually, is that with Jorginho in the single pivot, the fact that they were pressing us, Martin Odegaard was, instead of being up here, was dropping in a lot, coming deep to receive the ball, which obviously affected the way we built up on the right-hand side. And Benjamin White, who normally sort of like combines really well up here with Bukayo Saka, did get on the outside 1 or 2 times in the first half. But what Brighton did quite cleverly, I thought the manager was really astute. He switched his 2 wide players, and Matova came over onto Ben White's side, which immediately did was force Ben White back. And Ben White struggled with Matova's pace, and they nearly scored in the first half when he skinned him on the outside and could put a cross into, which the other winger put over the bar. So, you know, De Zerbi is an excellent coach. You know, the way he's got this team playing, Brighton, and the way his in-game management to sort of like switch things around. Even the second half when he brought Welbeck on, the way he used Welbeck, you know, they literally were better than us tactically as well as on the pitch, I thought. And I thought Arsenal struggled in this game. And
I felt that for losing Zinchenko and having that box midfield, which was an issue, where I think the plan did work quite well, is I felt we were quite man-for-man with their midfield 3, and so often we did actually nick the ball off them in transitional areas, and we actually created, I think, a lot of really good chances. I think Trossard should score. I think the decision-making was poor in the final third. Odegaard didn't have his best game. I thought Saka fairly ineffective, though he did beat his fullback a few times. But I actually think there were quite a lot of opportunities, and I think you play that half 10 times. I think Arsenal come out of it 1-0 out 5, 6, 7 times. You know, I thought we were kind of good enough value for it. And then we started the second half decently. But another thing that you said was the, I say decently, they score in the 51st minute. But another thing that was a big part of the plan was this, as you mentioned, the goal kicks. I'll let you take it away with this.
Yeah, I think these stats show the difference between the 2 teams, the way they played out. Arsenal were kicking long from Ramsdale, was kicking long over 50% of the game. So the average length of the kickouts was 54.7 yards. Normally Ramsdale goes short in build-up, doesn't he, quite a lot? Doesn't kick long all the time. This game, there's a clear change from Arsenal, whether it be because of the personnel they had at the back, no Saliba, no Zinchenko, for example, to go long a lot. Whereas if you look at Brighton, they were going short all the time. They're playing like cat and mouse. The goalkeeper had the ball, still was very good with his feet, by the way. And the way that their players were very comfortable, the way they played out, it was always like short passing. They, so they weren't going long, and their average length was only 8.8 yards. So if you look at the goal kick,
stats from Mark Statsbot.
Yeah,
let me
if
just
you go
say
and check
that.
him out, Mark Statsbot. So goal kick progression here. As a result of that, as you can see, that Brighton progressed the ball more than Arsenal, 49.2 to only Arsenal's 11, because Arsenal were kicking long a lot, I thought, and losing the ball, whereas they were keeping the ball and progressing the ball more because they were going short and building the play better.
I think that's what's interesting. We went long more, yet didn't progress the ball as much, and I think it's an interesting contrast of styles. This is where I'm going to get a little mad with Mikel, because I actually don't think he's got as much wrong as people will say in this run-in. I think the players have got quite a bit wrong. I'll explore that in a bit. But I think he had a shocker on the subs. I think he had an absolute shocker. I don't really mind the initial plan. I don't really mind the initial 11. Fine. Although I did wonder whether this was a game for Jorginho. I did think it would be quite transitional and Partey would be suited better, but quite frankly, with Partey's cameo,
Partey doesn't look good for the last few weeks.
Exactly.
So
that's why I can't hold him
Jorginho
to
deserved to start in the team.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So I disagree with there, but yeah.
Well, no, I just wonder whether he was more suited to it, but I get it. Jorginho was right to start.
Yeah.
But the subs I thought were pretty shocking actually. So obviously, okay, we lose Martinelli. Nothing you can do about that. He brings on Trossard. Let's bring Trossard in. I actually thought, as much as I love Martinelli, I actually thought Trossard might be quite suited to this game with a Tierney overlapping. He had a disaster, Trossard.
Almost like he was playing for Brighton. That's what a lot of people were saying around me.
Ben White too. Ben White, an absolute shocker. Not letting him get away with it. But he makes two subs. Jorginho comes off, and Xhaka comes off. Probably the two most experienced, stable players in the team in terms of they're just, you know what you're going to get, especially this season. And he brought on Partey, and he brought on, can you see Reece Nelson? There he is, Reece Nelson. He brought on Reece Nelson and moved Trossard into midfield in the 59th minute. Now
and he then took off Odegaard.
Yes, he did. He did.
On Smith
but to be fair, he left that a little later.
Yeah, but I think by now, if you look at this team, James, we've got it was a 4-2-3-1, wasn't it? 4-2-3-1.
Yeah. So did he go Partey, Trossard with Smith Rowe, and then we may as well jump ahead because then he brings Jesus off, and then he brings Nketiah on.
Yeah, he brings Nketiah on.
There you go. Those are his subs.
So he's got like Nelson here.
Yeah.
He's got Saka there. And there's your 4-2-3-1. And I think this is what led to the second goal, the fact that Trossard receives the ball inverted here and tries to sort of like play around their midfielder and loses the ball, and then it leads to the second goal, which I know you're going to talk about. This, to me, was... I just couldn't understand this shape, James. I'm not going to kill Trossard, and I must admit that comment I made about Trossard earlier. He's been absolutely magnificent for us this season.
Oh God,
I forget.
He was probably trying too hard.
Yeah. So against his former club. So, but this shape from Arteta when we're one down chasing the game, and I just don't. I was, in the stadium yesterday. I just couldn't understand it.
But Graham, Mikel, I love you. What a season we've had. Thank you. And I don't want to rant too much. My voice can't handle it. But why are we seeing Saka complete another 90 minutes? If the fact that he looks exhausted isn't enough, how about the fact he's just not playing well? I love Bukayo Saka, probably our player of the season. Some I argue for Martinelli, some will argue for Saka, that's fine. But, why is he seeing out another 90 minutes when he hasn't looked good enough to, or fit, or he just looks exhausted personally? You could bring him off, but you don't. You keep him on. Jesus, who I think...
should have stayed on, I think.
And actually, he wasn't having a great game, but in that 5 minutes before he came off, he started beating players, running at players, doing something. He comes off again. You bring on Smith Rowe, who couldn't get minutes when we were comfortably ahead against Newcastle very late in the game, comfortably ahead against Chelsea for most of the game. Doesn't get any minutes in that, doesn't get minutes in the 7-game winning run that we were on, but he comes on when we need him most. Fabio Vieira suddenly doesn't get looked at. Trossard getting moved deeper alongside Partey, who hasn't looked stable without the players around him he needs. So you're putting him in with Trossard next to him, with Smith Rowe ahead of him, with Kiwior behind. By the way, that's no excuse. Partey's been poor anyway. But Xhaka coming off, really? I just thought there was some really, really bizarre
like
decisions.
surrendered control, didn't it? I know we were chasing the game, and to ask Smith Rowe, who hasn't been getting minutes when we've been...
It was a total roll of the dice.
Yeah, it was. But you know, he would argue, we're one down, we're chasing the game.
Yeah.
I think the obvious thing for me would have been to sort of like move Trossard over onto the right, played Nelson on the left, and left Jesus on, or replace Jesus eventually with Nketiah. But you know, Jesus, to me, I think we needed to change the way we were playing, try and maybe get Kieran Tierney higher up. You know, he wasn't doing any of that to get some crosses in and get people into the box. But you know, I agree with you. It was almost like a last throw of the dice. Was almost like accepting that the game was, you know, beyond us at that stage, and it was almost like giving players minutes, and you're expecting players to come in who hadn't had minutes in games where we were dominating to retrieve a situation that they were never going to do. So, you know, he would argue that, you know,
and actually, sorry to cut you there,
yeah,
but that's what's crucial. I understand bringing on Granit Xhaka and going for Trossard in midfield when actually you're camped in their third and you just need that little bit more invention.
But we were
whatever.
never camped, were we?
We were never there.
We never had the control.
We were never there. So I thought it was really strange. I will say, what a great cameo from Reece Nelson again, and credit to Arteta. He believed in the player. I think a lot of us thought he was, you know, his time at Arsenal was done, but he has helped revive his career. The two of them, one well done to Reece Nelson. The Undav goal, as you mentioned, you know, it is poor from Trossard, but it's credit to Brighton as well for the way they pressed us, because Ramsdale, this isn't a bad pass into Trossard, and what's really interesting about Brighton is they're not man marking here. Yeah, they're not inviting the long ball, as you said, cat and mouse. They're inviting. They did it from their goal kicks, but they also did it from ours. They said, yeah, go on, see if you can play out the back here, and then when they do, Gross is really good at just reading the situation. It is poor from Trossard. I think maybe we play through that if we're a little bit better.
That's where we missed Zinchenko. Yeah. Zinchenko would have come in and received the ball, and I think been better with the ball. You could argue that, you know, he took a risk because we were one down in the game to try and flick the ball round him, bit in a way like Partey did in one of the previous games when he lost the ball against West Ham, wasn't it? And it led to their penalty. So we made mistakes, bad mistakes in games that have cost us. The game state by now, we were one down and he was trying to force it. So you give him some latitude for that. But having Trossard in that position of the pitch is not his strength, is it? And by then, of course, it was desperate for Arsenal. Brighton turned the ball over, and in the end, it's key for for their second goal. On the first goal, I mean, we haven't talked about the foul on Kiwior, and I know you've got a view on that because you know, he was fouled in the build-up, wasn't he? And
he was fouled. And I actually really liked Kiwior's performance overall. If you take that moment out, hard to do that, I know, and actually think he's done really well since he's come in for us. I think there's clearly potential there, but this is 2 goals he's conceded as an Arsenal player. He's 22, maybe 23. He's young. It's fine. Plenty of time to learn. But 2 where he really decided to not take command of a situation. And that was very concerning. Now, I said that Matt Turner must have given him a shout when he ducked against Sporting, but that looked bad on both. Fine, we move past that. If you've been fouled, you do one of 2 things. Either you just get through it till the ball's gone out, or you go down screaming and shouting and wailing and hands in the air and everything. So you at least force VAR to look at it. Because someone made the point that Trossard's goal against Leicester was disallowed for a little bit of a grab by Ben White or whatever. Cool. Then this should technically be disallowed again. But we didn't make a meal of it. We didn't actually put the pressure on the ref to do anything about it. Having said that, that's a last resort. Really, I'd rather you just stay on your feet and bloody head the ball out. Because Enciso isn't the tallest, and he's there and he's got a free header this distance from goal. Yeah, appalling.
I agree with
really
100%.
Bad.
You know, I think he should have. Obviously, everybody's got different pain thresholds.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're a professional footballer. You've been stood on. You're in pain. Stay on your feet, because had he stayed on his feet, the guy wouldn't have got the free header, would he?
No.
And if you're going to go down, you say roll around, make a fuss about it.
If you go down, it's because it really hurts.
Yeah,
so
really start screaming around like you know, and make.
He sort of just went down like, oh, that you know. But what do you mean? Like,
it looked bad, didn't it? It looked
rubbish. But I think, the moment looked rubbish. As a player, I'm excited about him. So Kivior, it's a bad moment, but I'm excited about him. He'll learn from it, and on we go. I want to talk about where the title might have been lost. Reason I want to talk about this is because it's been a big discussion. Have Arsenal bottled it? Have they thrown it away? You know, to win the title, you'd have to get 95 points, and how can you say Arsenal bottled it? What I will say is Arsenal, in a period of upped pressure, have definitely shown moments where they've not had the mentality quite to deal with it. Now, what I want to stress is you can just throw the bottle tag at Arsenal, and that probably is fair in a way.
Suits a lot of people, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
What I would say is
you don't bottle the league when you end up with 87 points, as we could end up with. So I'll say that.
Well, yes, but I would say also that I think there's context to the way that has happened. And I really want to make sure that we hone in on the detail here, because these are the first half stats against Brighton. 8 shots to their 3, 25 attacking third passes, 8 crosses, and 19 tackles to their 8. I think Arsenal here are showing, okay, attempts at goal, a good intensity, and actually, like I said, could have been ahead in that first half against Brighton, though Brighton looked quite good as well. When I look at, and I'm bringing up a graphic that I showed after Liverpool and West Ham as well, games where we were ahead and we threw them away, we started those games really well as well. 2-0 up in both, and the stats and the numbers look really, really good, especially things like ball recoveries, especially things like shots and the fact that we got our goals. Arsenal, in 3 games that have yielded very disappointing results, actually started those games really well. So is it that Arsenal are going into these games nervous, shaky legs, and can't get to their game? No, they can. They are playing their football. They are deploying plans. They are starting games focused, and they're doing well. They are getting themselves into positions where they could claim the 3 points they need in those games. But one thing happens: the West Ham penalty, the goal that Liverpool get back in the game. And I say that there's an intensity drop, and I showed these numbers, but that's not the point I want to make in this part right now. The goal that Brighton score, that really was very easily avoidable. All those moments, Arsenal, I think, crumbled from that point. They couldn't rediscover the football they were playing earlier in the game once those moments happened. So if you're saying Arsenal bottled it, or they crumbled it, or the pressure got to them, I think it's about understanding that Arsenal couldn't deal with the moments of adversity when they came, not that the occasion from the very start got the better of them. Would you agree with that?
Certainly in the Liverpool game.
Yeah.
I thought the West Ham game, we were in control of that game, made a mistake, got them back in the game, then we missed the penalty, didn't we? So the penalty could have sealed the game then.
That's true, yeah.
And then, of course, we made the mistake when we played out that led to their equaliser when Bowen gets in and scored, and Ramsdale, I think, should do better. Certainly in the Liverpool game, I agree with you on that. West Ham game, there have been a number of reasons, I think, why we've dropped points in this game. In these games, injuries to key players have been part of that. But and clearly Saliba for me is the massive miss, which I want to talk about his numbers. Well, I think you're going to show us.
Well, we're going to in a sec.
Yeah,
but I make this point to say that none of this is on Arteta for me. No. This for me, you have clearly set the team out right in the Brighton game and in these games to go out and win the game and start well. And when you look at our run-in results, let's bring them up here. It's funny because it's 2 wins in 7. The 7 before that, we won 7 in a row. But I look at it and I go, well, we're 2-0 up at Liverpool, so add 2 points there. 2-0 up against West Ham, add 2 points there. Let's just say Arsenal don't capitulate like they did against Brighton and we neck an extra point. That's 5 points. That 5 points would put us still above Man City right now. That's not including the fact that we should have won at home to Southampton. That's not including the fact that we got battered by Man City. So the point I'm trying to make is, if Arsenal just dealt with these moments of adversity, the reason I'm not including Southampton is because we just started that game terribly. And so there was no point in the game at which Arsenal looked in control, looked like they might win it. Yeah. But with those two and then Brighton, I think there were points where Arsenal looked like they might. And if Arsenal could just get through those moments of adversity better when they come in games, we could have 5 extra points on the board. I know it's all ifs, buts and maybes, I understand. Yeah. But that's where the mentality does need to change.
I think so. I think you make a really good point. The one thing I would say is Liverpool away 2-2, despite the fact we're 2-0 up, I still think it's a very good point to go to Anfield and get a point.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, had we beaten West Ham and Southampton, and people need to realise this, going into this weekend's games, Manchester City would still be ahead of us on goal difference.
Yeah.
That's the 4 points, even if we won those games.
Yeah, I think I misspoke. Yeah, so basically we'd be right next to them.
They'd be ahead of us. Even if we're 4 points behind them, if we won those games, we'd be level on them. They have been absolute like a juggernaut. They've won 11 straight Premier League games. Yeah. They've lost one of their last 14, 15. They're unbeaten in 22. So, and I think that does have an effect on the team. So I think on Sunday when Everton sort of capitulated to an easy win for City, I think that would have affected the players going onto the pitch. They would have known by then that the situation. And I think the other key is we lost twice to Man City. In those first 19 games we had 50 points, but we didn't play Manchester City at all in the first 19. We played them twice in the second half of the season. We should have played them back in September that the Queen passed away. Now we would have been in a better place to play them then. We were on a good roll. They weren't quite at it like they have been now. So a bit like the Tottenham game last year, that got cancelled and rescheduled. That worked against us in a way, which I know was our fault because we cancelled the game. But this also played into Manchester City's hands. We lost 6 points out of 6 against Manchester City and nearest rivals. You can't afford to do that.
No, I completely agree. And the final thing I want to say is about conceding too many goals and why this title race slipped away from us. And there's so much to unpack here, so I will try to be quite quick. Let's talk about, you sent these great numbers through about how Arsenal at home, they've conceded fewer points. They have fewer points at home than Liverpool. They have the same amount of points as Man United at home, who have played a game less. But then the only teams in the league to have conceded more goals at home are Fulham, who sit 10th, Bournemouth, who sit 14th, Everton 17th, Leeds 18th and Southampton 20th. That's appalling.
Yeah, you
don't win the title.
I think the home form hasn't been good enough. We've been conceding far too many goals. I think we're a better team away from home because we play more in transition. The strength of this team is the wingers. And often than not, again, teams have to push up the pitch more. Even with a low block, we're able to sort of like win transitions, and those wingers take advantage. At home, teams sit deeper, and it's harder. But having said that, we're conceding goals at home, and I think sometimes because we're slightly more expansive at home because we have to be. Away from home, we can sit back. When we score that first goal, we've scored away from home goals very early on in games that enable us to control games better. Whereas apart from more recently, obviously, but generally at home we're having to sort of be slightly more expansive, which means that we take more chances in our build-up shape of 3-2-5, which gives the opposition the opportunity to play against us in transition, and I think that's reflected in these numbers. I think William Saliba, a massive miss. When he's been in the team this season, we were on for 93 points until he went out 7 games ago. We're now, in that run, we're on for 63 points. That's the difference. With him in the team, we only concede 0.7 goals. With him out of the team, we concede an average 2 goals. That's the difference. Saliba. Also losing Zinchenko, massive for me as well. And I think defensively, we haven't looked the same.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's been a massive miss. And I think, sort of round off this discussion on where the title's been won and lost, I think, yes, Saliba's a miss. But De Zerbi has been happy to take Caicedo out of midfield. Imagine we had Caicedo, we'd be saying, don't you dare move him from midfield. He's been happy to do it and found other solutions. Yeah. I think Arteta needed to find better solutions. The Kivior thing came far too late. But I also think the players, when facing adversity in games, I don't think really stood up to it. And Newcastle was so refreshing because I felt like they did.
Yeah. And that's the difficult thing. We did at Newcastle and we couldn't repeat.
But over the run-in, largely, no.
I think the other key point, one final key point, is as well as losing Saliba and Zinchenko, Saliba, obviously a massive loss at the end of the season now, to lose Tomiyasu at the same time, as he could have come in and given minutes to Ben White, minutes to give Ben White a rest. Ben White, the last few weeks, has looked knackered to me. He's been up and down that right side, and he needed to be taken out of the team. We couldn't afford to do it.
I thought he did well at Newcastle, but he looked appalling against Brighton, I'll be really honest. All right, let's go into the roundup stats. Graham?
It's not the last roundup stats of the season, but the last roundup stats for Arsenal having any opportunity, I think, of winning the Premier League. And they're pretty depressing reading, actually, so I'll keep them brief. Arsenal have won only one of their last 6 home games for Brighton in all competitions. They are very much our bogey team at the Emirates. Arsenal have now conceded 25 goals at home in the Premier League this season. Their joint most in the campaign, level with the 2001-2 season, the point that you made. Their defeat to Brighton was their biggest home defeat since April 2021. They lost 3-0 to Liverpool. Wow. And they've only taken 9 points out of the last 21 available, as we've highlighted, winning 2, drawing 3 and losing 2. However, I'll try and end on a positive, well, as positive as I can get. Despite not scoring yesterday, Arsenal have only scored, it's not actually a positive. Despite not scoring yesterday, Arsenal, I'm trying to sort of make light of it, of course. Despite not scoring yesterday, Arsenal have only scored more goals in 2 previous Premier League campaigns. Well, it is a positive. They've only scored more goals in 2 previous Premier League campaigns than the 83 they've scored this season. 2004-05 they scored 87, 2002-03 they scored 85. And guess where they finished in both those campaigns?
First?
Second.
Oh, correct.
That's
Did
it,
you
mate.
say the years? I was anyway. Yeah, look, of course there are positives from this season. Of course, we're not going to reflect on this season just because of this one game. This team have come a long, long way. They're a young side. I'm incredibly proud of them, and I'm so excited for the Champions League. If you do want to be left with some hope, Arsenal fans watching this, and a reason to be really look forward to next season, which I think the players should have given you anyway, a reason to be look forward to for next season. I think the fact that the Champions League is back is a reason to look forward for next season. But Josh Kroenke was apparently there. Was it Josh or Stan? I think it was Josh Kroenke was at the game yesterday. And he was there with LA Rams coach, Sean McVay. Now, if you don't know the story of the LA Rams, not that I know it particularly well myself, what I do know is that Sean McVay, a young coach, given an opportunity at the LA Rams, started to do well, got them to the Super Bowl, they lost. They then go and invest massively on big players, big money spent to make it happen. They go and win the Super Bowl 2 years later. I think the message is that the Kroenkes, they've shown a very recent history for supporting a young manager that's able to get them to a point but not quite over the line. Lots of links to Declan Rice, still links with Moises Caicedo. Although we'll see after that if how Ty's feeling about that particular signing.
Yeah, just quickly, for me though, I'm just to finish up on this, James, sorry to cut you short there. I've been enormously proud of this team this year. They've given me moments of joy this season. Yeah. This has been a fantastic campaign. For me, they played the best football in the Prem this season. Yeah, they're up against a team, Manchester City, who are likely, I believe, to win the treble. They've got a fantastic chance to win the treble. I think the players, obviously yesterday, the worst performance of the season, I think, in my eyes, because of the way it ended up. I think so too. And I feel flat, as everybody did when they left the stadium yesterday, and some left early, which I think is their right to do so. I stay to the end, and I know you would. But let's get, I've been enormously proud of the team this season, James, and what I want to see in that last home game against Wolves, I want everybody in that stadium and give these players the send-off they deserve. And let's hope in the summer that Arteta gets the backing, we can get the right people in to go again next season, because I think Arsenal, even though in the end we haven't won the Premier League, some will say that we sort of like bottled it, I hate that term, but that's what they're saying. Me personally, I can't see how you can bottle it when you've had, you scored close to 87 to close to 90 points, and also where we were last year. Remember, we were 5th last year, so we've come a long way. But they've given me moments of joy this season, and they've under Mikel Arteta, they've played some great football. And I'm immensely proud of this team. Yeah, I completely agree. So Josh Kroenke, Edu, Mikel Arteta, you know what to do. If you can add 3, I mean, we need more players for depth as well, but if you can add 3 real quality players to this squad, to this group, we go again next year, and let's be competitive on all fronts, because we're still going in a really good direction. Hope you've all enjoyed this video. Apologies for my voice, hopefully it's just about got us through. Hit the like button if you have enjoyed it. Check out all the content that's coming out on AFTV and will do ahead of Nottingham Forest, because we still want to get points on the board and finish with as many as possible and end on a high. So there we go. Big thanks, we'll see you soon.
Shop for AFTV merch at shop.aftv.co.uk. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat and Twitch. We've got content for every platform, so check it out.